Hi again. Yesterday we talked about the first two of the four eating behaviors that we tend to gravitate towards as human beings. We ended with talking about the normalized eating pattern or cycle that can happen and how it can get you to restriction or compensation and binging. So next we'll talk about restricting. Restricting is not a biologically normal state of being. You learn to override your hunger signals, your hunger sensations. You may dislike the feeling of food in your stomach. It gives you, if you have an empty stomach, that gives you a feeling of control. So really has some psychological indications about how you treat food, how you go about food. Restricting can cause the effort effect. So basically you've been restricting, it's not feeling great to you, you have this opportunity that comes up, maybe somebody offers you food, or you know that you have some sweets in the pantry, something along those lines, and you've just had enough of restricting, and so you say F it and you go for it. When that happens, that deprivation can lead to a restriction backlash. So going back up to our cycle here, you restrict, then that backlash can lead to a binging, and then you find yourself restricting or compensating again. We'll talk a little bit about what I mean by compensating, but before we get there, one of the places that I do love to gather information from, one of the people that I like to follow a lot is Janine Roth, and she says the fourth law of the universe is for every restriction, there is an equal and opposite binge. So there you go, see? Binge down to here. All right, so before we get to talking about binging, I want to say in that restriction phase, there can be compensating, which means not only are you holding back on your food, maybe what you eat, when you eat it, how much you eat, or just not eating at all. It could also mean that you'd be like, you know, man, I did some normalized overeating yesterday, so today I'm going to do 100 extra burpees. I'm going to go run 3 extra miles. I'm basically going to compensate for my overeating, or try to compensate for it. So it's not only just holding back on food, it's trying to find some way or another to compensate for what you feel like was an abnormal overeating pattern. That could be because something like guilt comes into play. That's something we'll talk about a little bit later in the obstacles to a normal eating path, but just covering the 4 eating behaviors right now. So down to binging. What happens when you binge? It can be distressing in nature to some, but not all. And by that I mean, I'm sure that there's been somebody in your life that was pretty happy about binging. I know when I was in my early days of college and late days of high school, everybody was always crazy about ordering a pizza and eating a whole pizza by themselves and how awesome that was. So in those cases, those people weren't really distressed by it at all. But it can be distressing to some, and usually when it is, it's when you find yourself back into this cycle. So binging can be one of 2 things. It can be large amounts of food, or it can be lesser amounts of food of what you would consider to be forbidden. So I learned about myself that I binged not so much in the normal way that we think about it, where I just went and got tons of food and ate as much food as I possibly could, and maybe it was by myself in the quiet of my own home. My binge was more like I decided I wasn't going to eat sugar anymore, but then when I fell off and I just had that effort effect, I ate a little bit of, say, brownies or chocolate, something along those lines, and then felt horrible about it. So it's more about how you feel during the eating, whether it's during the normalized overeating, the restricting, or the binging, than it is about the actual amounts or even the food types. Because there's been times that I even binged on what would be considered healthy. So, for example, maybe I made some good quinoa protein bars that maybe were seemed a little bit of a treat, and instead of eating one of them, I just ate as many of them as I could in that sitting. So another thing that happens with binging is you eat until intervention. So by that can mean something like you have run out of food. All of the food that you cooked or purchased for your binge, you ran out of it. You ate it all. It could be something interrupts you. Somebody comes home, or you get a phone call, or you have something on your schedule that you have to leave for. So something interrupts you. But when you decide to stop eating, it is not because you chose to. Some sort of internal cue, short of pain in your stomach, provoked you to stop. It was more of an external cue that provoked you to stop. So those are the 4 eating behaviors that we talked about over the last 2 days. And as we go forward, we will talk more about the obstacles to normal eating path. If you want more information about the nutrition modules that we address these issues in, go ahead and go to www.crossfitbanshee.com, and we have information on nutrition modules there.